You are now listening to Testimonies with Terry.
Hey everyone, this is George Wood, and answering some of y'all's questions from the interview that I did with Terry not too long ago. Thank you for, thanks for reaching back out with the questions. I appreciate that. I'm going to start off with the first one, and that one being, with being exposed to sex at a young age, has lust been a struggle for you throughout your life? If so, how do you manage it? Wow. Well, starting right off, let me have a sip of coffee before I answer this. Starting right off with the hard ones, huh? I think it's not a simple answer because lust has always been a struggle. I am currently I haven't been as active as of late, but a member of SA or SLA, which is Sex, Love, and Addiction, or Sex Addiction, which is basically a 12-step group for people with sex addictions. And throughout the years, I've often went to their meetings and even had a sponsor for a period, and actually just a few years ago did a whole year where I celebrated a year and sober and got a chip and everything. So I have struggled with lust and sex addiction throughout my entire life. What I can say now as a counselor, that I don't think the answer is as clear as just struggling with lust. I think it's multifaceted because it's more the effect overall of not being able to feel loved or feel accepted or feel belonging around other people, feeling this incredible void within myself that needs to be filled is probably a better reality that I was trying to actually change. Where often, just saying, do you struggle with lust? That's sort of the Christian, Puritan view of, don't lust, it's bad, where there's usually something behind it that's bigger than just lust, right? So yes, I struggled with lust. Yes, I did my entire life. Was it because I was exposed with sex, or was it because of the trauma that happened throughout all facets of my life? And that I'm not really sure what the exact answer is. I think it's a culmination. But some of the ways that I've handled that has been through going to sex addiction groups, through understanding what was happening and understanding it wasn't who I wanted to be. Sometimes, let me say this, sex is very tricky because it's part of our everyday life when we're married, or should be anyways. And it's complicated when you're dealing with something that you can become addicted to. So with that, you have to change parameters, and it's constantly evolving, sometimes into something other than what it originally was. And so we educate ourselves, or we should, and understand the way that unmet sexual desires or lust can manifest in other areas of our life. And it's important to keep them healthy and whole. And whether that's accountability, whether that's groups, whether that's the Lord with prayer. I certainly have a whole list of prayers that I've prayed over the years dedicated to keeping me where I wanted to be mentally when it comes in regards to my lust issues or my sex problem issues. And just for the record, I don't know if it's because of how extreme my life became, but seldom do I ever think of things in terms of a lust problem, because my life has gotten so far beyond lust that, I don't. Neither me or the men I actually work with are we talking about lust. We're usually talking about full blown addiction and that realm of things. Great question though. Thank you. Okay, here we are. Second question. Did my relationship with my father ever get better after seeing him at the grocery store? Yes, it did. We did reconcile to some degree. Definitely did become involved in each other's lives more. I don't think it ever became some made for TV movie of the week that you'll see on Life Channel or whatever. He wasn't a Christian, wasn't fond of Christians as a whole, because he never really dealt with the death of his first son. So he sort of wanted to, took more of the blaming God approach. And so as I got my life together and got sober, I also had Jesus. And so I don't think he was ever fully comfortable around me as a Christian, as a pastor. But we were in each other's lives, and we worked together at times. When I was still doing construction, we would do some construction jobs together and things like that. Try to make a point to see each other a couple times a year, and maybe holidays maybe. He only lived 5 or 6 miles from me, so that's not a lot when you really think about things. So we did reconcile to some degree. I had a spiritual father, just for the record, that when he became my spiritual father, it was early on in my recovery. One of the first things he made me do was actually tell my father that I loved him. He felt that we can't tell our Father in heaven that we love him if we can't tell the Father that is right there in our presence, no matter what they've done. And so I did. It was interesting. It was one day that my father and I had worked together doing construction, which I did, construction in between pastor jobs, 15 years ago. And anyway, so we had worked all day together, and then he was dropping me off. I'll never forget it. He was dropping me off at my house, and I got out of the truck, and I paused, and I didn't want to do it, but I knew I had to do it because my spiritual father was going to call me on it. So I was like, "Oh, Dad." He's like, "Yeah." I was, "Love you." He's like, "Yeah, okay." And I was like, "All right, see you tomorrow." That's how that went. So my dad was a biker dude, rebel, redneck, biker dude. So lived and died that way. Anyways, third question. Here we are. How did I meet my wife, Julie? And what is the biggest difference of having Jesus in this marriage compared to my first marriage? Great question. Yeah, Julie is amazing in every way. And the way we came together is a huge part of my life transformation story, because we were brought together by some friends of ours in I'd say church. Okay, church is how we got together. But it wasn't your standard, church building, and everybody went on Sunday. We part of small church, home church movements here in Tampa, and I was part of a home church, and then I left to start my own home church, and Julie came in that year the year after I left, and my best friend who ran that home church and his wife became very close with Julie, and we're right around the same age, and most of the people that were part of the home church movement were younger, college age, a lot of them. And so Julie and I, being around the same age, both divorced, both had a child that was right around the same age. And she, at the time, Julie was in the business world and lived in a gated community and really wanted to move to the inner city and be part of mission work and sell everything and give it to the poor. And my friends, they saw that in her, and they knew that's how I was, and they really prayed about it and felt like the Lord said that we were supposed to be together. And so they introduced us, and it truly was almost like a prearranged marriage, because they had faith where I didn't. And I'm not even sure Julie did, really. I talk more openly about the fact that I didn't, because I just wasn't there yet, as a man, or whole as a human being even. And so being put into the situation, I rebelled, where I felt like, oh yeah, you just think we should be together, we're the same age, and whatever. I still had a lot of baggage from my prior sex addiction and all the sex that I'd had in my life, and carrying it into this. For my first relationship, I had went many years celibate, and but felt like, my first, whoever I was with was, probably going to be like the girls I was with in the past, and that was definitely not Julie. So I rebelled. We actually dated for a few months, and then I didn't feel, I had this sneaking doubt that I wouldn't be able to be faithful or honest or happy, and so I ended the relationship. And it was after that I actually was leading someone else through the 12 steps, and as I was doing it, I somehow realized that I'd been sexually abused as a child, and I never realized it up until that point. Not on a deep level of acknowledging it. So it caused me to be able to go back and heal some areas of my life, and then have more confidence that I was ready to be married. And so Julie and I got back together, and it was it's an amazing story, but we got back together, and then we're married. We got back together, I think, in January, and then we're married the following October. So basically within 10 months we were like married. And it was amazing wedding, amazing journey to get to that point, and then getting married. And how has it been so different with Jesus? Been totally different, and not easy, hard, but it's an amazing marriage. It's just with Jesus, especially being older, being someone that has basically made every mistake in the book, not wanting to make them again, really calling on Jesus is often a harder thing to do. So it's just easier to go with who we are or how we think we should handle things, but Jesus often means going to the altar in prayer and really seeking him for guidance, and being humble, and being able to admit you're wrong and admit you need to change, and loving the other person as they are and not making them change. And so it's totally, to really live a life, a marriage out that is after the heart of Jesus, it's different, but better and more fulfilling. We've been married 11 years on the 15th of October this year. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. Okay, here we are. Question 4. What advice would you give someone who has a family member struggling with addiction but isn't wanting treatment? How can they help their loved one? Oh, man. That's a hard one because so many factors go into that. I guess, right off the rip, it's like, don't give up. Don't give up on them. And don't give up on the hope that their lives can be transformed and one day fulfilled. But it's a complicated question because every addiction is different, and every person is different, and every situation is different, and how a person ended up there is different. So advice on what to do in a particular situation it's not standard. So even as a counselor or pastor, every time I sit down with someone, it's always a different story, right? So I think part of it is acknowledging that they are an individual who has had something happen to them in their life that has caused them to feel pain, and they no longer want to feel that pain. And one of the ways that they are able to escape that or avoid that is through their addiction. And even though they are incapable of seeing that addiction may be harming them more than the thing they're running from, certainly harming the people around them, it provides a safety net around them where it is the thing that gives them a feeling that they don't have otherwise. And so understanding things on that level, you can also begin to understand all areas of their life must be firing on the right cylinders. It must work in order for them to ever really find recovery and wholeness. So what does their life look like? Is it a life that someone would want to live sober? And if it's not, then maybe there's areas of that you can help with, as opposed to directly trying to help with the addiction. So a person, we have to remember, is made up of multiple parts. And so relationships matter, and community around them matter, and potential matters, and hope matters, and what they love to do matters. And so it's like all these areas, not just the addiction, that matters. And so sometimes it's by helping people find their way back to life, and then digging deeper into who they could be helps with an addiction. And the only thing you can do sometimes is just not give up hope and not give up on the person, and try to understand who they are and what they're going through and what brought them to that place originally, in order to really help them. So I hope that helps. And for the fifth and final question, we have any particular testimonies that stand out of men who have been transformed by what God has done through them in your community ministry. So I don't necessarily know if whoever asked this question, if they mean particular testimonies of different men, or what the men themselves have gone on to do after being transformed. So I'll try to maybe answer a little bit of both. I think I love whoever asked this question, they say in the bottom, the final line is community ministry, what's been done through them in your community ministry. And I love that. Whoever asked that, that's great, because it really is. It's a community ministry. And often in community ministry, what you're really doing is just living out life. And when you're living out life, it switches the paradigm. The paradigm typically is you go into a drug program or church and get discipled, and you go on and do this thing, and then everybody can say, oh, look, he did this thing or she did this thing. Oh, look, they graduated and now they bought a house and they have a car and a great job. Yay. And move on. It's like it's always like this thing that we can point to that's the answer to what we've done effort-wise. But that's not life. And I think we realize that when we break it down like that, break it down differently. It's like, that's not life. That's an aspect of life. That's something that's happened in life, but yet that is not life. So life is, okay, yes, let's same example. You bought the house, you got the wife, you got the car, you got the career. Can you keep that? Can you hold that? Can you live that out when things go bad? Can you stay on track when everything goes wrong? Can you not throw in the chips when you lose your job, when the house burns down, when whatever? It's like life happens, and community ministry is about really being there as life happens. So, for example, we have a guy. I didn't say that right because I don't have a guy, but a friend of mine who came through our organization, who is still in my life and part of my community, is a powerful story of redemption, as he lifetime heroin addict and in and out of prison, and died a couple times, and lost his daughter to the state, and didn't have her for years, and eventually was able to go through this whole process of systematically winning her back from the state by doing all the things he was supposed to do. And so when he did that, he finally was awarded his own daughter back, but he didn't have anywhere for him and her to live. So we actually built them out a house on my property, where now he actually lives on our property in a mother-in-law house that him and his now wife, he's married, and that daughter that I mentioned live. And so it's like this beautiful story of redemption. But the truth is, the community piece of it is that since he's had his daughter back, everything has been really hard. I mean, of course, the daughter went through a ton of trauma as a child, seeing all the things that him and the mother would do. The mother was a prostitute. He was in and out of jail. She was, doing tricks in the same room. I mean, all this stuff happens. And so that impacts this now adult, who herself, after, getting her back, was really tough. She ended up getting pregnant and having a child at 14, and so as a community we rallied around them and supported them, and now we all sort of raised this kid, and even now to this day, she's 18 now. She's still making bad decisions from time to time, and we try to, as a community, come around and support him and keep him, the father, our friend who came through the organization, sober, because it's been hard, man. It's like, you think it's this one thing, like that's the thing you tell a donor, so a donor will donate to your ministry, and that's great, but then life happens. It's like, yeah, but there's all this other baggage that you got to now live out. And that's the community ministry part of what we do. It's like being there in each other's lives, helping make better decisions to bring us to who God created us to be, to live out our destiny. That is really a challenge when, like they say, the devil never sleeps. And so he's always throwing something different at us in different ways. So God is always there, but the devil is often there as well. And so the community piece of us being around each other is so important in walking this out. That would be like one way of, an example of what our community ministry can do. But if you meant the first thing, which is somebody that went through our community ministry and then, kind of went on to do some other great stuff, we have another guy who's been, was with me in the very, very beginning of the initiative. He's now been sober almost 12 years, and one of the earlier guys that I had, and still sober. He was a former professional baseball player, and he's went on to be this powerhouse of an individual who speaks all over the state, sometimes country, about his recovery. He leads other people through recovery. him and his wife do amazing work in the recovery field. His son is, now this loves Jesus and is a scholarly student who, has really was a challenge back when his father was going through his own recovery. And he's one of these evangelistic type of people that everybody knows him, everybody loves him, and he has transformed and changed every life that he's touched. And it's really powerful to know that we played a small part in that. And so hopefully that's another answer. I could go on and on about lives and the way they've been transformed and changed just by what God has done, because God's amazing like that. So thank you all for your questions.